All right, we are joined here by Amir, from the founder of DarkFi and probably a bunch of other projects. You might know him from crypto Twitter. He's very much into the privacy side of things, and yeah, we'll get into all of it more in the talk. Let's just jump straight into it. So why does privacy matter?
It's one of the core cypherpunk pillars. Anonymity, uncensored, censorship resistance, and sovereignty. You know, if you want to, the whole point of cryptocurrency is that we've got algorithmic money that's issued by private markets that moves at the speed of light, and it's much better than fiat money, which moves at the speed of law. So obviously the governments don't like that, and cryptocurrency is not something that exists in spite of governments. It's antagonistic. There's no way that the US, which has its global financial empire, is just going to be like, oh yeah, cryptocurrency, it's eating into my market share, cool, no problem. Governments are going to fight against that. And the more that cryptocurrency becomes useful for the people, useful for people to mobilize and free people, the more that the people that lose power are gonna not like that, and they're gonna crack down. That's when you're gonna need to be anonymous. That's when you need to protect yourself. That's when you're gonna be able to want to speak freely and not be censored, not have your transactions censored, and have peer-to-peer networks where they can't go after it and shut it down. So it's really, you can't have one without the other. You need all three of them together.
Right. And what would you say to people who are like, oh, I don't need privacy, I don't have anything to hide, or stuff like that?
I mean, if you've got nothing to hide, you're probably not saying anything important. So to be honest now, the West is in like a terminal state. And there's I remember 5 years ago, there was a bit of a doomer vibe where it was saying that, oh, surveillance, this tyrannical structure, that's oppressing us, we're all doomed. But now there's like this tangible, optimistic wave that's coming up where people are like, it's starting to realize, people are realizing like, oh, wow, in our lifetime, we're going to see the end of globalism. And more people are like starting to see the effects of censorship. And so there's this window of opportunity for us to mobilize and to change things, because the system, it makes people passive and nihilistic because it sells people this consumerist, hedonistic lifestyle. It's like, oh, just, relax, get free money from the state, do nothing. Oh, you're a free individual, but it's a fake freedom. It's not the freedom to like change the world. Whereas, other people are starting to realize that we've lost something spiritually, and there's this like yearning to kind of expand or to grow. And so people are beginning to mobilize and to move. That's when you're going to need your cypherpunk protection, so that we can have that opportunity to like mobilize and to speak freely. Like what we stand for as crypto people, crypto anarchists, is full anonymity, 100% uncensored speech, no hate speech or whatever, complete freedom of speech, and full sovereignty of the people, popular sovereignty. That's like, and if you're against that, then you're on the wrong side of history. And if you're like defending people that are shutting that down, because that's what's happening, people being put in jail for just making posts on the internet. That's wrong. The government is clearly wrong. The government's like literally murdering people. Like 2 million people are killed in the Middle East in like random wars for nothing. Absolutely nothing. Like we didn't gain anything in Afghanistan or Iraq. The US has lost. So it's like our elites that exist are extremely corrupt. But they've lost their legitimacy. Like now more and more people are going, that's why there's so many movies about criminals where everybody's like fascinated with the criminal because the law has become dubious. They've lost legitimacy. And it's not to say that we're criminals. We're not criminals. We're forest rebels because we have ethics. And, you know, they go, oh, well, what about anonymity being used for criminal usage? Well, they're the ones that invented that label of what's criminal, that morality, and they're the ones that judge us by the morality they invented. When if anyone's the true criminals, it's them that are the true criminals, like literally going and making wars, killing people. And not only that, all these scandals that are emerging where it's like, oh, you know, kids went missing. You know, oh, there's the, you know, but it's like suspiciously close to like prominent political figures. So, and you know, they're the ones that are all powerful, inventing the morality that they judge the people by. And it's not the same. You can't judge like, you know, the oppressed and the oppressor on the same moral scale. So they have no legitimacy. And fundamentally, we're on the winning side of history. Anybody that's on their side is on the losing side of history. Like the technology is so powerful. There's never been an example of power or like a state winning against a new technology whose time has come. So yeah, it's just too strong. All we have to do is keep building, and it's not even that complicated. People overcomplicate things by going, oh yeah, blah, you know, these complicated arguments about, you know, what's the right thing. It's very simple. You know, people's freedom, people being able to speak against power, people being able to self-organize, to be anonymous. That's moral. That's like, you know, in support of society, because society is under attack. You know, like everything about our structure of institutions is not made to free people. They put us in school and they brainwash us for decades, you know, with education that's not meant to turn people into individuated free people, but into slave people.
Right.
Or like when they arrest someone and they put them in jail, you know, they use all these like psychological techniques to reform people. So it's all like a system which, you know, in the past, if you did something wrong, they'd like execute you, and that would be like a physical violence. But now it's like a metaphysical violence. It's like a violence like that goes beyond just like the outside, like our skin, but it goes deep into our minds. And that's like a spiritual violence that's inflicted on a deep level. So there is a war against humanity and against society and against nature. And so that's like a violence that's being inflicted. And so therefore we can't be going, oh, you know, privacy, but not too much privacy. It's like literally, no, we have to put out all the stops for absolute freedom of society, of the people, protection against that infliction that's happening against us.
Right. Yeah, you say like people are kind of trained to be obedient, like the schools, the way they were invented was to like train more factory workers and keep them like...
I mean, look at how we learn mathematics in school. It's literally just memorize the formulas. You don't actually learn underneath, like, you know, how to derive the equations. That's just a simple example. You can apply it to anything, science, you know. It's like, or for example, computing. Like they teach you, oh, how to use the Microsoft products. They don't teach you how to do programming. They don't teach you how the computer works. So it's not education that's meant to empower people.
Right. So what do you think about the recent case of the Telegram founder being arrested, and people saying, yeah, but that is good because they will like crack the privacy of Telegram and then they can see what ISIS is organizing, blah blah blah. But there's like very tricky stuff, like, because on one hand, like, it makes sense that you want to like be able to stop terrorists, but as you say, like, terrorism is like defined by, like, it's framed based on who is doing the judging. And
I mean,
they're
they're like all powerful adversary that controls our lives and I mean, like, terrorists, how many people have they killed, really? And also, if you really want to know, ISIS was actually had heavy influence of Western intelligence agencies. The whole reason ISIS started is because the US was releasing Islamists from jail in Iraq, equipping them and sending them to Syria to like overthrow the Syrian regime.
Right.
And then it was like, oh, oops, ISIS has been created and now it's causing us problems. So it's like, who's had a heavy hand in destabilizing regimes across the world, which has allowed terrorism to flourish because they've had a personal financial interest in, at the time, those groups spreading. It's very hypocritical. And then they're like turning around and they're using that excuse. I mean, realistically, they didn't go after Telegram because of ISIS. The reason they've gone after Telegram is because there's a neoliberal regime, like a globalist power in France, that's afraid of the right wing and they want to stop it. And so that's why they're going, oh, we need to stop hate speech on Telegram. But all they're doing is they're making it worse because a lot of people, working class people, are suffering bad. And there's no space for them to express like what's happening to them and their communities. And instead they're called fascists. And I grew up with a lot of those people in England, and they're not racists. They're just like, it's just like there's a very predatory regime which actively hates people. It hates us. It like literally, it sees us as bugs to be like exterminated. And it doesn't care about, you know, like our interests. It just cares about enriching itself. Like, for example, I saw an interview with BlackRock founder Larry Fink, and he's like a finance guy, and he came to the government of the UK and he's like, oh, I'm very concerned about labour shortages in England right now. And the government responded to him, oh, we're about to accelerate, we're about to start a new phase of accelerated immigration. And I was like, wow, that's so crazy. Like, the country is like literally tearing itself apart. There's far right, there's Islamofascist, there's far left. There's like no dialogue between people about the issues, about the exploitation. And the government's like, oh no, we just need to like full on
immigrant acceleration.
Accelerate everything. It's like very, very bad situation. And, you know, people in the West are seeing that happening now to their native populations. That's been going on far longer to the rest of the world. And like the West of the world has suffered under that. And there is now a faction who's like, oh, if the West loses its predominant power base over the entire world, then, you know, certain rights that are guaranteed will be lost. You know, like abortion's like a good example, you know. It's like, yeah, abortion's like, you know, important, like if a woman is raped, for example. But and so, yeah, like people are like, oh, you know, the globalist regime is a protector of that power, therefore we need globalism. So we're heading into this, but it's kind of like, it's an inevitable trajectory that we're heading into at this phase where Western civilization has had this like very long sunny day, but the sun is setting and it's like the time of the dusk, and we're entering into a very long night. And the nighttime period is the period where the people who worship the moon will prosper, because the moon illuminates our pathway through the darkness. It's a very different phase to the old one, which was all about like, you know, factories and industry and structure and systems. And it's a very new phase, which is all about narratives and reflexivity and, you know, mobilizing. And that's the mindset we have to approach. Whereas right now, a lot of people in cryptocurrency, they're very influenced by, they're very much connected to the deep state in the US, to the central bank money printing, the VCs, etc. So the way that they see the world is like, oh, we need to just think up a new governance structure. We need to think up a new system, as opposed to, and that's why they're very disconnected it's like, why now in cryptocurrency, everybody's going, shit, what happened with cryptocurrency? Where did we go wrong? There was a dream, but that dream didn't happen. So where did it go wrong? And it's like our thinking went off path somewhere. And it's like, we're just, everybody's so disconnected from everything that's happening now. And it's very simple. Like, you see normal people, what are they suffering from? What are the problems that they experience? That's the problems we need to be solving. People, they're not allowed to participate in the economy. They're shut out. Give them the ability to trade and to send money and not be censored economically. Give people the ability to speak. Like, imagine if an authoritarian regime comes to power, which may have happened or may already be happening in some places in the world, and they start putting your friends in jail. What do? You start communicating online anonymously, so you're protected. You make an anonymous DAO. You start fundraising. You raise money. With the DAO, you organize. You start, organizing your tasks and work anonymously, and you start paying members anonymously, and you start mobilizing. That's like the infrastructure of the future that we need. That's like the core important topic, and yet it doesn't exist. Like, we've had billions of dollars, we've had all this time, we haven't solved the core issues. Like projects, privacy projects, can you believe it? Privacy projects in cryptocurrency. They're going, join our Discord. But they're putting devs in jail. How can you be using Discord when they're putting devs in jail for making privacy software? It just obviously means that you're not making anything important because you're not afraid of going to jail. That you're not like adversarial in your mindset, like going, oh yeah, we have to like protect ourselves. Every cell that exists in nature has like a cell wall, has some mechanism of protecting itself. Otherwise the cell or the community doesn't exist. So cryptocurrency, it's not about making, communism or making like the new, global governance structure of the future, which all those kind of things that people imagine on paper, they only work if you've got an identity system or you've got a surveillance system. It's about looking at communities and going, okay, these communities that have the values that we share, what do they need? How can we empower them to be more powerful? Identifying the use cases. It's a very simple thing. And we haven't been doing that. We've like really dropped the ball as a cryptocurrency community. So yeah, it's all about cypherpunk values, cypherpunk spirit, because that's what made cryptocurrency. That's what originally created Bitcoin. So everybody's now soul searching, going back to basics, going, oh yeah, it's not about like, making money or, all this other stuff. It's about, because look at the products that we make. Like, I remember watching the sci-fi in the 90s and I was going, wow, I can't wait to live in the future. It's going to be so cool. They had these like interfaces like beep, 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 beep. And you're like, whoa, it's going to be so cool. But then look at like, expectation versus reality, like what we live in now. And we use these like apps and they're awful. They're like very slow. They're very buggy. They look horrible. They have tons of white space everywhere. It's like Silicon Valley mindset where it's like, oh, let's make a company. Let's make some scam products. And before we've actually developed any tech, we're going to start getting money in and get money. And then we're going to hire loads of staff, HR, blah, blah. But we haven't hired people to work on tech. And let's grow and let's expand. And then the tech almost becomes an afterthought where it's like in the future, yeah, when we have loads of money, maybe we'll make something. It's like, what's it called? Like where you lie, fake it till you make it. Mm-hmm. That's the dominant mentality in tech now. And it's like, oh yeah, our users, we don't really respect our users. Our users, they're just like plebs, like a resource to be exploited. So everything becomes about getting...
Forget you have to call them community now.
Getting as many users as possible. And the problem is they're like, oh yeah, we have to make it like user friendly. And so they make the UI for like low IQ people to attract the most stupid people. And the problem is it actually makes people stupid. It like disempowers people. It's not making your people powerful or uplifting them. It's like making them weak. And that's, for example, like, Gen Z, apparently, like I read an article recently, they don't know how to use printer. They don't know, or they don't know how to use a file system, because when you use a Mac, like it doesn't have a file system anymore. It's like deliberately hiding it from you. It's like, oh, files, no, you shouldn't know about that. And there is like been like a severe degradation in the technical capability of devs. Like I noticed it from 10 years ago that devs today are way less capable than 10 years ago in what they can do. And it's not just devs, it's like society as general has like experienced a technical dip. And so as cryptocurrency people, we fall into that trap or mindset where we're like, oh, valuations, number go up, mass adoption, onboarding, and we forget what the software was meant to be about, which is innovation, which is freedom tech, freedom tech where people are anonymous, where they're completely uncensored, where they're sovereign. And so therefore, we're not making tech which allows communities to build infrastructure to become economically powerful. That's why we haven't built anything yet that's like truly innovative. So,
do you think the reason for that is because it's like the use cases that empower these like powerless people are kind of, the people don't think they are profitable, or they're like more driven to like building easy shit?
I think it's actually massively profitable. I think the first crypto projects to realize this are going to be the ones that are going to be the next generation, because all the crypto projects now, if you look at them, the reason why they look so bland and boring is because the people that's paying the money is the system. It's like, all these VC companies, and they're all, where do they get their money from? Bankers, central banks, people printing money. They're not getting it from like normal people. So all the projects, they're connected with all of this, and they're like playing the game. And so they're like, oh, we need to not be, we shouldn't talk about values. We shouldn't talk about things that are going to scare away investors. We need to be accepted, and we're not going to challenge the government, because that will threaten the VCs will pull out. And so all of crypto is built up around this RegFi regime, and so that's good for us. That's good for DarkFi, because it means all the innovation is still on the table. So it's like, oh, nobody else is doing it. We're not even afraid, we're not even feeling that rushed because we don't have any competitors. Right. We don't have any, it's been literally decades and nobody has done it yet. So it's like, oh, it's like on the table, and we're just going to take it because no one else can take it, because they're too beholden to their paymasters. And so, crypto projects, they're all playing the scam game. But there is now a huge populist wave. And that's what politicians have realized that they can tap into. That's like all these right-wing politicians, but there hasn't really been any tech projects tapping into that mass populist energy. So that's the actual people. That's the people and their needs, and that popular will. And cryptocurrency people, the reason why cryptocurrency people haven't delivered those use cases is not because it's not economical. In fact, it's probably more economical. The market is much bigger. It's because they're co-opted, they're corrupted, they're captured before they even started by the people that control the money supply, that fund the projects.
Right. And it also at least partially comes back to the fact that you can't really freely do token sales. Like you're kind of forced to this path where you raise from VCs, because it's much harder and regulatorily tricky to raise from the crowd. Yeah, interesting. And yeah, do you want to talk more about what you're actually building?
Yeah, like DarkFi. So we're building an app now. The app is kind of like Telegram, like anonymous, fully anonymous, most anonymous in the world peer-to-peer chat. So there is no concept of identity, or the messages are unlinkable. So if you look at the Tornado Cash case, the reason why they got sent to jail, one of the big reasons, is they had all their Signal chats and they said, oh, you said that, therefore you're the CEO. So with DarkFi, we wanted to be able to talk about the project freely. And so we have this chat system, and allows the community to participate. So if ever they try to go, oh, you said that, we just go, it wasn't us, you know, that's not us, could be anyone. But then inside of that app, we're going to start, that's going to be our like platform that we're going to start having all the other applications. Because we think that the MetaMask web browser paradigm was a mistake. It's just like a dead end. Because, you know, people like, they host these websites with the crypto app and then use MetaMask. And it's ugly, it doesn't work properly, it's buggy. And also the web app is liability. The people hosting that, you know, they get sent to jail for hosting infrastructure. It's not really P2P. There was Moxie Marlinspike from Signal. He did like an analysis of Web3, and he said, oh yeah, Web3 is mostly a scam because it's not really P2P. So we never really developed like a proper platform for like P2P decentralized apps. So that's what DarkFi is trying to achieve. And DarkFi is kind of like, in the same way Monero is like anonymous money, like Bitcoin to Bitcoin, DarkFi is like anonymous smart contracts, the anonymous version of Ethereum. So I mentioned we got a chat. We also made like a system for, you know, task management, calendar, productivity, which, you know, doesn't exist anywhere else in crypto. All the projects using like Google Docs and stuff. We also have anonymous money, so you can make transfers, you can issue your own money, currency, you can do swaps, so you'll be able to bridge in other currencies, you'll be able to trade them anonymously. And then also we made the world's first and only anonymous DAO, so it's a fully on-chain DAO, can call any smart contract function. You know, you've got a treasury, you've token weighted voting. So that will be there in the app. So people can be able to, you know, communicate completely anonymously with DarkFi. And then they'll be able to send money into DarkFi. They'll be able to trade it. They'll be able to put it in an anonymous DAO, you know, with anonymous members. And they'll be able to do anonymous, everything completely anonymous, make anonymous proposals, anonymous voting, anonymous executing. That's like the initial vision that we're going to ship. Now we're coming up to the last test net. And yeah, but then in the future, there's like a lot more interesting things to be able to expand into. Like we never in crypto had anonymous markets, like to buy stuff online, to trade, to meet up and to trade like for fiat cryptocurrency. We had local Bitcoins, you know, we had the darknet markets, but we never had P2P anonymous versions of that. So we really need to build that. Another really interesting area is like anonymous information marketplaces, you know, where people can like sell information and people can verify that information before they buy it. We never had anything like that. So there's like, anonymous design space is completely unexplored. It's the new paradigm in crypto.
And is this running on its own chain?
Yeah. We have our own blockchain.
Okay, and it's a version of Ethereum, so it's EVM based?
No, it's like its own virtual machine.
Okay. But okay, I want to zoom out and go back, like how you got into all of this, and you wanted to go to the Middle East and help by doing some programming, and things got a lot more hands-on. Is that how would you describe the situation?
I mean, I was ready to fight.
Yeah.
I was pretty sure I was going to die anyway before I went there. But I was very interested in democratic confederalism and ideology of the PKK, and I'd been studying it for quite a while. And then, and it's interesting because that was, I literally sacrificed billions of dollars worth of, money that I could have had, by like leaving from a very key period of crypto where it suddenly boomed after I left. But ISIS attacked Kobani, and I kind of felt like I had to go and help however I can, because as someone who's ideologically a revolutionary anarchist and was seeing what is happening and like knowing about their ideology and stuff, I was like, if I didn't go to help, I'd be a hypocrite. So I went there and I'd actually learned a huge amount. It had a very drastic effect on my thoughts and the way that I see the world and political action. And I gained a lot of value from that experience, in the sense that it has allowed me to become a more effective political operator in terms of furthering my political beliefs. So I kind of went there with like a activisty libertarian kind of mindset, and I kind of saw that there's like a movement, and it was kind of like when the Syrian government imploded, it wasn't that suddenly people started picking up arms and they said, let's make a revolution. It was that there was a force of 30,000 people, the PKK, that had been fighting Turkey for decades in the mountains, and they'd been studying political philosophy, been reading Baudrillard, history of civilization, Nietzsche, like loads of philosophers, and they're very intelligent, smart, capable, disciplined people. And in that power vacuum, they crossed over into North Syria and they began organizing people, which in that state was a crisis state. Like ISIS is about to attack, and they start giving people arms and weapons. And these are people who've never fought before. And they're like, they got to train them how to fight, and they start equipping, they start organizing people. And they say, okay, they're coming to attack your family. And what do you do in that situation? You have to go and attack. But not only for the war, but also the society. How does society function? In economics, in education, in law. Because even if you're in a war, you still need to have a system of government. So they began organizing all of that, training people, teaching them also about philosophy, about history, so that people understand where they are, and they start gaining that libertarian belief, and then organizing, the society along those lines so people can like govern for themselves. They can resolve their interests. Society can resolve their interests. So that's why I understood, and that, if we want to make like politics, or we want to make a revolution, it's the same as any other activity that we do. If you want to make a software project, you don't get a bunch of people together like what happened in Occupy, and you say, okay, now let's decide what we're going to make. And people start waving their hands, and, you go, oh, that's a good idea. And you get in as a committee, you decide. That's not how things get made, how visions get formed. You form a vision through contemplation, through study, and you decide, this is going to be our activity. This is going to be what we're going to do. And then you recruit people for that. And the people that you recruit, you also train them in that. So in the same way, any religion or any movement through history. Yeah, so any revolution or any religion, there's always a core group of professional people, or people that are like dedicated to that cause. In Christianity, it's like the priests or the monks. In Buddhism, it's the monks, And then you have like a church, or you have a temple. And you have people, they go to the monastery, they study, they learn about that belief system, that political system. And they go and the churches, they help spread that to the people. Because you've got the wider community of followers, and they believe in the thing, or they sympathize in the thing, they support it, but they also have like a family, they're not full-time in the thing. And so, they're the ones that are given, the 10 precepts, these are your 10 commandments. So it's also similar with politics, where, you or a project, a software project, you have a vision of what you want to make. Like Steve Jobs, he said that the role of the CEO is not to be a boss, to micromanage people, but it's to be a storyteller. And it's to like tell a story that's compelling, because creative thinking people, smart people, sometimes when I'm writing software, it takes me a long time to really think about that problem that I'm solving. And it's not something that somebody can come and say, hey, you should do this or you should do that, be managed. It's something you think about and form over a long period of time. So it's like a story, or like something that as a team, you're coordinating together, and you're putting your mental energies in a common direction. So it's like that with politics, and you have a vision that you want to go towards, and you bring people in around that cause or that belief, and you develop them. You develop their raw human potential. You develop not only their skills. So, for example, if you're a guerrilla, you're fighting against a big army. You learn how to use a gun. If you're in a software project, you learn how to write code. That's like how you change the world. But then there's another side to that, which is, okay, what's the vision? What's the thing that we believe? What's our common values? And that's what you organize around, and that's what you help spread and you help grow. And you've got the objective that you're going towards, the long thing, but you also have the roadmap. So it's like you break it down into tasks that are along the way, and you focus as a whole team on shipping that first thing, achieving the first objective. Why? Not only is it important to ship, because when you ship, you get the feedback, you put it out there, you see how people use it, you see how people respond, and it's a feedback, and you change how you maybe need to adjust your strategy. But also it raises morale. It's like you're actually you're moving along the way. So politics is the same thing. When we go out and we're building a movement, that's like the biggest thing that I learned from Rojava, as well as like the philosophy of democratic confederalism, which is the only solution for the Middle East, for the crisis in the Middle East, where the Kurds originally, they were fighting for their own nation state. But then when Öcalan went to prison, he basically realized that in this area where the Kurds live, it's not just Kurds, there's Arabs, there's Armenians, there's many different people living side by side. They form like a web or a fabric. And this is true of the entire Middle East as well. And that the nation state is artificial creation from the West imposed on the Middle East. And it cuts across all these like clans and all these different loyalties that people have. And that's why it creates conflicts. And actually what the Middle East needs is a new type of civilization, which is what he called democratic confederalism. Now, when you say democracy, it doesn't mean like representative democracy where you've got like a state and you've got a head of state who owns the entire thing, but it means actually localized power, where on every level all the different nations have different representation, which is different to the Western liberal view, which is like, oh, everybody's the same, whereas Öcalan saying, no, everybody's not the same. There's Muslims, there's women, there's youth. These are all different nations. We have to recognize those nations. And those nations have to self-organize their own governance to be able to put forward their own demands and to be able to harmoniously self-manage with other nations that maybe inhabit the same geography. So this is the point of departure that I see is missing from all the governance discussions in cryptocurrency, because it's heavily influenced by Western neoliberalism.
Right. What I really liked about the story when I was reading it originally is that like you went there to basically fight in this war, but you were not like ethnically connected. You were like you didn't have any connection, like a family, any relation like that. It was purely like ideologically driven. So I want to ask you like how you came to this this political ideology, and like it seems to really drive you forward. Like what was any specific turning point or anything really shaped you in this person that cares about this specifically so
I mean,
much?
I was when I was very young, 16, I went in because I got very much into free software and Linux, which I was like, wow, this is the new economy of cyberspace, of the internet. And then I became very connected with the hacker movement and the anarchist, like European hackers. And there was like a movement in Europe of squatting buildings and making social centers. And so I was involved in that for over a decade before I got into cryptocurrency. So, yeah, that was like that used to be a very strong movement in Europe. It like no longer really exists anymore. But at one point, the whole like European anarchist squatter movement was very strong. And in particular, the like hacker anarchist movement.
Why do you think it died down?
The reason the European anarchist movement died down is because they were too much focused on doing things, like doing action, like building software, building social center, but they weren't focused on their philosophy, their ideology of building up their ranks, of themselves as an organism. And the problem is when you have a movement and you bring in all sorts of people, and those people, you know, you invest energy into, for example, training them in technical skills. If they don't have the philosophy, they're not going to be able to carry forward that philosophy. And therefore your movement won't grow and it won't like become strong.
Right. Okay. And the semi-final question, which I wanted to ask you before, how much you know, the instability in the Middle East, and how much of that would you say is the fault of US meddling in those affairs and yeah, spreading democracy?
I mean,
spreading democracy.
yeah, I mean, part of it is direct meddling by the US. Like, for example, Henry Kissinger, who deliberately divided Arab states to infight against each other because it would allow the US to remain predominant. The Western powers used to be all about furthering a certain set of Western values to the rest of the world, and that was why they had this tremendous soft power and they became respected by the world. But the West turned away from that, and they became purely about immediate self-interest, about enriching themselves, about maintaining the balance of power. This is what Kissinger was about. He wasn't like, oh, we're going to support this country because they're more in line with our values. It was more just like, oh, you know, if we support this country against this country, then they'll both be weak, but we'll be the one that's in charge. So it's a very bad policy on the US side, which caused tremendous amount of instability, but it's also backfired against the US, where they used to be very powerful and they've lost a lot of that credibility. But even more so than that is ideologically modernity and, you know, Western, like the nation state and these political systems. It is only in the last 100 years or so that the Middle East has this huge issues with genocide, of ethnic cleansing, of religious fanaticism, of fundamentalism. the Middle East is like for thousands of years had many different peoples living side by side with each other. There's Gnostic communities in the Middle East that have existed for forever, like for thousands of years, and they only disappeared, like got wiped out in the last 10 years or so. So it's really something to do with modernity that has caused this. Like the Islam. I mean, Islam. I'm not apologizing for Islam, but Islam, the modern Islam, like ISIS that we see, is like a very exaggerated. It's nothing to do. It's not traditionalist Islam. I mean, yes, you can say like Islam was spread through conquest, which is true, but
say the same for Christianity.
I mean,
but yeah, those are some
that's
rabbit holes to dive
I mean,
down.
you're talking about the Chalcedonians and the Catholics, not necessarily the original Christians in Europe. Anyway, but yeah, ISIS is like a caricature of the old Islamic conquest. And they're really savage and brutal on a whole other scale. But it's kind of like an immune system reaction against modernity, where the Middle East people feel so insecure and so under threat by globalism that they react in this extreme way. And they're trying to reassert their traditional values. And you see it happening in the West now, where there's like a neo-trad Christian wave that's rising up. It's also part of this reaction against modernity.
Right. All right, and yeah, the final question is like this. Let's see, this space specifically, maybe not all of crypto, although, yeah, all of crypto is kind of veered off these cypherpunk values as well. But this place specifically, there's, I would say, more SolarPunks than LunarPunks. People very focused on these optimistic visions and next-gen villages specifically. So yeah, let's combine this with like the closing thoughts. Why you think these LunarPunk values are important to uphold, and yeah, how would you balance this with the more SolarPunk visions?
Well, LunarPunk's very optimistic, but it's optimistic in the sense that we're seeing globalism collapse, but it's opening a window of opportunity for society bottom up to mobilize and to form communities. And that our role as technologists is not to design some abstract, mega city. Like you see a lot of the SolarPunk, they talk about pop-up cities, or they talk about states, network states. It's very top-down vision. If you look at a lot of the pictures that they have, it's like Dubai, but with a bit of grass on top. So it's not like a truly, decentralized, sovereign society. Whereas the LunarPunk vision is more about, we're turning from the day of the era of the sun and the desert, which the desert is like, there's no difference. It like eliminates all difference. It's like the all-seeing surveillance apparatus, and the sun is setting and we're entering into like the long night. And in the long night is the era of the moon. And it's the people that worship the moon which illuminates our path and allows us to mobilize through this kind of dark forest. And the forest is like the cyber gorilla and the forest, they exist harmoniously together. The dark forest is an analogy for cryptography on the internet. The forest provides us cover and concealment. So the stronger the forest is, the stronger we are. Like the more that we can mobilize as community, as like interlinked bottom up. It's like when the English went to Ireland, what they did is they cut down all the trees because the trees provided cover for the partisans, for the guerrillas. So the dark forest is like, it's all about difference. It's all about distinction. It has like all these little nooks and crannies that you can hide in, where all different communities can thrive. Different voices can speak up. And, that's going to be a complete reinvention of values, and people don't like that. They're like, oh, it's going to be an era of change. It's going to be an era where, you know, certain groups that were in power, certain groups that, you know, that were benefiting are now going to be taken down a notch. They're going to be disenfranchised. You know, they're going to lose. But it's going to open up new ecological spaces where new groups can mobilize. They can go in, you know, they can start to grow. And that's a healthy thing. That's how life grows. That's how nature grows. It's part of, like, you know, history. So, you know, we should be encouraging that. We should be, like, helping that forwards. And cryptocurrency right now, there's all these, like, regulated, you know, reg-fi side of crypto established companies. As soon as, like, the government turn against them, what's going to happen? The VCs are going to take their money out. You know, they're going to, like, suddenly lose their backing. People are going to get scared. Liquidity is going to exit their system. Meanwhile, there's going to be DarkFi there, which DarkFi is built ground up to be in defense of society, on the side of, like, the people. And we're going to be, like, saying, yeah, look, the state, the government, it's not your friend. It's the enemy of humanity. And so what's going to happen? It's going to validate our thesis. And the more that we succeed, the more that they're going to crack down on us, because the more of a threat we are, because the more value or use that we're providing for society.
Right.
So there's a feedback loop. So
and
this is
that
like,
also grows the movement, because more people are like, like, this is actually valuable.
I mean, look, now they're putting people in jail, and that's not like scaring us. It's having the opposite effect. People are like, oh, they're trying to shut us down. We're the ones that are moral. You know, we're building this with a moral vision. They don't have morals. So they're not going to tell us what to do. They haven't tried to convince us with words. They're trying to convince us with force. And the thing is, violence cannot solve math problems, which is what cryptography is. If you ever thought about, Mother Nature is based off of mathematics. And when we're doing cryptography, we're essentially summoning Mother Nature. We're doing magic spells that give us some protection, that protects society and protects society from the state. So it's eventually we're wizards and we're doing magic. That's like cryptography. It's like a really powerful thing.
Awesome. Yeah, cautionary and inspiring. I love it. Thank you so much for joining, and
Thank you.
thank you for listening.